We are building the welcome message project from the YByte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in. We saw previously that we could create flexible functions in the sense that functions which could take any number of inputs by using, for example, a star in the argument definition. Now, this is kind of like what is called args, or say non-keyword arguments. In this video, we'll move further and we'll see how we can actually make use of these arguments. To that end, remember previously we were printing words. We will start, in fact, exactly there. So when I do, for example, Python 3 minus I, say wm.py, notice that function is now available to me. If I were to call, let's say, short form, let's say with these 4 arguments, it prints out the arguments, words over here. Now you notice that this looks much like a list, except that there's a very big difference. This is in round brackets. Now, basically that inside this function, all these arguments were put together in what is known as a tuple. Now we will talk in detail about what tuples are in a separate video, but as far as we are concerned right now, we can think of tuples as lists which have basically items at different instances. So think of this for now. I mean, this is not exactly accurate, but for now, let's just think of it as lists. Having done so, basically what this means is that, look, I can, let's say, create my shortcode still. Remember, my shortcode was going to take the first letter of every word. So I can just go and say, well, final is equal to, let's say, an empty string. Kind of what we were doing, for example, in our secret messages project, when we had this kind of a requirement. So I just say final is an empty string. I just go and say for, let's say, word in words. Now remember, just like I can run a for loop over a list, in fact, we can run the for loop over a tuple as well in exactly the same way. So the word here is going to be taking values which are, let's say, smart, intelligent, brilliant, super. If there are more arguments, word will just iterate through all of that. And what do I want to do? Well, I just want to go and say final is equal to final, let's say, plus word, for instance, 0. Now, basically, that's like saying that, look, take the first letter of every argument that you're getting. Once I'm done with all this, I must exit the the for loop, and then I just go and say return, let's say, final dot. I'm going to remove this print words. Now this function here is flexible as well as useful. We'll see this in a moment. When I, let's say, run this again, now important that we run this again, because only then the updated function is available. Now notice what happens. Let's say when I run short form smart intelligent, I get, for instance, SI. If I run short form with just, let's say, smart, just one argument, I get only S. In fact, if I run this with, let's say, 3 arguments, smart, intelligent, brilliant, then I get SIB. That's because, remember, this words is a tuple. We are running a for loop over the tuple, which means we are basically going through every item of that tuple. And hence, I just go in, I just keep, let's say, adding the first letter of every item. So this is very, very flexible. In fact, I can go and let's say, I say, well, powerful, maybe. If I were to do this, it becomes SIBP. In fact, like I said, you can have any number of arguments, and this is super duper cool. Before wrapping this up, let's just take one more example, even though we don't need this for this project, but let's just, for the sake of clarity, let's say I define a function, let's say sum, and in that I just go and say sum, I say star, say numbers. Let's say I want to sum up any number of numbers, right? So if I were to do this, well, remember, numbers is going to be a tuple. So I can just go and say for number in, let's say, numbers. Say answer is equal to answer plus, say, number. But of course, I must define my answer. So I just go and say answer is equal to, let's say, 0. Now remember, answer is a variable that is local to the function, but it keeps getting updated. And then thereafter, I can go and say return, for example, let's say answer. Now, when I run this piece of code, notice, first of all, I must, let's say, run the Python program again. Now I have got a function available for me called sum. I can go and say sum of, let's say, 1 and 2. That is 3. Sum of 1 to 3. 1 to 4 is 7. Sum of 1 to 4, 10, for example, is 17. In fact, I can give it any number of inputs. It will keep working, right? So it's pretty cool. Just like short form, star words allowed me to give, let's say, multiple arguments to the short form function. This sum with star numbers is allowing me to give multiple arguments to this sum function. Like I said, this is all happening because inside the function, words or numbers are being, let's say, interpreted like a tuple. As we have seen, tuples seem quite similar to lists, but there are some very, very important differences. We will, look at this in the next video. We'll try to understand these similarities as well as differences much more clearly. I hope this has been useful to you. In general, if you think this way of learning by building activities, by building pieces of code, trying to understand what's going on, if this is something that appeals to you, look at our website, because that is how we learn Python programming. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.